Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular council meeting for September 26th. And what a beautiful day it is in Stony Plain. For those that were around and about during the Alberta Culture Days, there's a lot of activities happening in the town of Stony Plain. But I'd like to draw your attention to one event that did happen that we're really proud of as a community is the unveiling of the 41st mural within the town of Stony Plain. And it's located at the new library. If you had a chance to look at it, it kind of opens up your imagination. That's about book reading, about different things that can happen when you open your imagination and never stop to chase your dreams. Members of council, there's the agenda before you. Administration, anything to add?
No, Your Worship.
Good. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the Town Council adopt the September 26, 2022 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. Moving on to public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to talk to council about anything that's not on the current agenda. Administration, has anybody registered to speak?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Since nobody has here to speak, anybody in chambers like to speak to council on anything that's not on the council agenda package tonight? Okay. Seeing that, there's none, so we'll move on to presentations and delegations. We can do that. There's two presentations today. The first one is the Translator Tri-Leisure Center. So welcome, gentlemen. And again, please introduce yourselves to the audience that are maybe watching, and then speak directly into the mic.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Stony. I'm the General Manager of the Translator Tri-Leisure Center, and with me tonight is Mr. Jerry George, who is our Board Chair and Stony Plain Public Representative. It's our pleasure this evening to be here to speak to the 2023 budget for the Translator Tri-Leisure Center. I'll be spending most of my time focusing on the budget. However, we did include the 2022 annual report, and at the end of the presentation, Mr. George and myself would be happy to answer any questions you may have. So just a quick overview of the presentation this evening. I'm going to speak quickly to the TLC's peak priorities, review the 2023 key objectives, get a bit more into the detailed budget on the revenue and expense side, talk a little bit about cost recovery, capital infrastructure items, breakdown of the municipal contribution, and then get into a little bit more breakdown specifically around that contribution. And then at the end, of course, ask and answer any questions that council may have. So as part of the TLC Board of Directors' current long-term strategic plan, they identify 4 key priorities that we focus on as administration when preparing all of our budgetary items and our focuses for each year. Those being personnel, engaging stakeholders, asset management, and key service levels. Our 2023 key objectives, it's proposed to be another busy year at the TLC, as we've seen so far in 2022, both from an operational as well as facility life cycle perspective. When we look at employee engagement, safety, development, and recognition, we're going to be incorporating an internal staff satisfaction survey, which will be a follow-up to the Great Places to Work survey, conducted 3 consecutive years prior to COVID. This will allow us to supplement with a check-in of sorts with staff over the past couple of years to determine areas we can continue to improve as an employer to both support staff and enhance their enjoyment at work. We'll be adding a health and safety advisor role as we look to further strengthen our focus on health and safety for both our staff and our patrons. And we'll continue with the successful and appreciated scholarship program that the board started a number of years ago, of which our staff have taken part in over the last 4 years. In the area of customer experience, safety, and stakeholder engagement, 3 key items that are included. One is that we're going to continue to expand on our online options, self-serve options, with regards to the upgrades of our IntelliLeisure software. We're going to continue on with phase 2 of our locker retrofit and replacement plan, as well as an upgraded security camera plan, which will include new cameras throughout the facility, which are more cost-effective and managed internally rather than by a third-party contractor that has delays at times. Finally, in looking at the building enhancements and upgrades, there's one carry-forward item for this year, which we'll be doing in 2023, and that's the evaporative condenser and cooling tower, and that was due to the fact that it simply didn't arrive in time for our installation period. The remainder of the items listed there, I will be covering in a bit more detail later on in the presentation, and those are 2023 items. From an overall operational perspective, we're looking at self-generated revenues of just over 5.8 million, expenses not including depreciation of just over 8 for a cost recovery rate of 73.17%. Digging a bit more into the details, that's the breakdown of our membership, or of our revenues, pardon me. Membership passes and admissions we're projecting are going to continue to increase. We've seen a very steady increase over 2022, which is a good sign, returning to about 85% of pre-COVID, which is pretty typical in the region. Programs and services are going to continue to rise as well. We are flat out and programs are quite full, especially in aquatics, but also in our children youth services programs and our fitness and wellness programs as well. Facility rental, we again are going to see an increase in that area. A lot of our special events are starting to come back, which is exciting to see. This past weekend we had a karate championship event as well as the strongman competition, so very diverse, unique events in addition to our more standard typical use. We're seeing an increase in ice usage as well as field time, not only for our more traditional sports of hockey, skating, ringette, and then on the soccer field, or on the field soccer, but also an increased use in baseball, lacrosse, and other user groups as well. From an administrative perspective, our administration revenues include our tenant rents, sponsorship, and those types of things, and that's going to slightly increase in 23 as well. So total of all of our revenues is about 650,000 over current year. Just taking a look at the 5-year trend. So again, we're seeing it increase and slowly get back to pre-COVID days, and that's a positive sign for sure. And so we're looking at, again, that increase over time, and we're hoping that trend continues. On the expense side, looking again, of course, an increase there. With the return of more typical operational hours, through COVID we had reduced our operating hours, and now facility demand along with our programs and rentals is really speaking to the fact that we need to return to our normal operating hours. Salary and benefits, of course, would then be the largest increment of about 650,000. There's a few reasons for this increase compared to 2022. As I mentioned, our facility operating hours are moving back to more traditional hours. During the last couple of years, we had shifted away or reduced by about 2 hours a day, give or take, and so we're seeing the need to come back to those more traditional hours. We are adding one new half-time position in children and youth services, which is an area that's much needed support to better enhance our preschool program, as well as other children and youth services programs. Our COLA increase for 2023, as per the collective agreement, and step increases also factor into the increase in salaries and benefits. Having said all of that, overall, we still are approximately 3.5 FTE less than we were pre-COVID. So it's just the shift in grids, the increases, step increases in COLA that factor into that. Materials, goods, and supplies stay fairly steady, about $50,000 more than this current year. So we're trying to keep those in check. And utilities, there is a bit of an increase there. And again, some of those costs are just beyond our control. 5-year comparison, again, shuffling for more towards pre-pandemic numbers, slightly above. And again, that's the cost of doing business that's continuing to rise. Looking at cost recovery rate, and we do our best to have as high of a cost recovery rate as possible, which minimizes the impact on municipalities. 2022's was set for 72.37, and we're well on projection for that, if not slightly higher. And 2023, we're anticipating a slight increase from there as well. Switching to our capital and infrastructure request, 2023's capital request is about $355,000. Main items, our skid steer is well beyond its life cycle, and it's actually costing us more in repairs each and every year, and so it's time to replace it and get a new unit. Concourse seating, so in our lower area in particular, is in need of replacement. We've lost items over the last number of years just due to wear and tear, and so it's time to replace those. Gravel spreader, again, an item that's well beyond repair, and with that being the only means of us sanding our parking lot, it's a pretty imperative piece of equipment come wintertime. Pool access stairs, so we've got 2 different sets and we alternate replacing them about every 5 years, and so this is time for one of those sets of stairs. Fitness equipment, annually replaced. We've got a pretty comprehensive fitness equipment replacement plan. Over the past couple of years, of course, with reduced usage, we've lowered that budget, and so we're starting to now see time to replace some more of our significant equipment, and so there's pieces of that in there. And I mentioned earlier the enhanced security cameras as well. Looking at infrastructure, so more of those building type amenities, we're looking to do a comprehensive facility audit in 2023 to better inform our long-term capital and infrastructure plan. As we know, 2026 identifies a fairly significant year, the 25-year mark of the facility, and so we're hoping that this facility audit will better inform that plan of what we could potentially push out more years or identify things that might need to be done sooner. Phase 2 of the locker retrofit, as I mentioned before, we've got preschool program space upgrade. So we did phase 1 this year. We've got one more piece to replace next year, and it's been very well received by program participants and staff alike. In the what used to be Shots Lounge, we've actually taken that space back over for a couple of different reasons, and as such, we're looking to turn it into more of a multi-purpose room. The flooring in there is very aged and very challenging to do programs on it, and there's a few other amenities like tables and chairs that we're looking to add. And this will become our primary rentable space within the facility. We get lots of requests, lots of demand for rental space, and we really don't have anything to provide the public. This would be things like birthday parties, meetings, annual general meetings for our different associations and such. So lots of demand, and we're hoping to meet some of that with this new space. Some ongoing parking lot maintenance as we look to the future. It is identified in a future year to do a complete overlay. However, we're trying to just maintain it in the interim. We've got a few pool pumps. We have a number of pumps that we replace over time and spread it out over a number of years, and we're just continuing on with that. And then the final item is a bit of a unique partnership with the Parkland Pirates, looking to, this is phase 2 of a 2-phase plan. We're looking to replace or add a bulkhead and replace the starting blocks as part of phase 2, as I said. So looking at a contribution summary and compared to this current year of 2022, you'll notice it is a significant higher total ask. Operating of about $200,000. Capital life cycle, we're $355 total. Infrastructure at just under $650. So all total about $800,000 more than last year. A couple of notes that I want to make in compared to 2022's budget. We did utilize carry forward funding to fund the 2022 capital budget, and we also used 50% of the infrastructure dollars were funded from a restricted reserve, and that was to try to ease the impact on the municipalities last year. So makes it look a little bit even greater of an increase than it normally would. So just to summarize, internally generated revenues have increased by about 10.29%. On the flip side, our expenses have increased by just under 9%, and the municipal contribution has increased in our proposed budget of 7.87%, with an operating cost recovery rate of 73%. That concludes my presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you much for your presentation, and definitely it's good to see what's been occurring at the TLC and reading the report. Definitely it has been a difficult 2 years, and hopefully we can continue to build the community forward and having the TLC back to where it was pre-COVID. Members of council, any questions for clear understanding on the presentation? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Yes, before I get into it, I can also ask questions at this time.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you guys for coming and doing your presentation. I appreciate specifically you mentioning the Shots Lounge, and I appreciate that that's kind of been a difficult space to keep filled. So my kudos to you guys finding a good use for that space. My question is, obviously, well, maybe not so obviously, without there being a regular tenant in that spot, there's funds that we miss out on that, obviously. when there is, it does bring in money, versus using it as a rental, multi-purpose space. In terms of the dollars that we expect to get from it as a multi-purpose space, I'm sure it's got to be more than a non-existent lounge. But I'm wondering if you did any calculations there, if you're anticipating significant revenue differences there or anything to that effect.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Meyer and rest of the council. We didn't do specifics this go around. A couple of reasons for that. We're still looking to set the rate for one, and we're trying to get a sense of birthday party versus our own programming needs as well, because it will be used for internal programs that the TLC is running that may overflow from a different area. That being said, we did adjust and amend the lease a couple of years ago, actually, so it's been about a year and a bit since we took that space back. And again, wanted to wait until the time was right to ask for some infrastructure investment back into that space. But we do get a lot of demand. It's already being used in the condition that it's in for a variety of meetings and special events. So I think it's going to be a really popular spot, and future budgets would have a very clear delineation of what that rental revenue would be.
Okay, well, and just again, kudos to you guys thinking outside the box on that one, making good use.
Councillor Petchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. If we could go back to page 36 of 155, and you can speak to the $650,000 increase in salaries and benefits. I'm just wondering if you could be a little more definitive of what that 650 equates to.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Petchko and the rest of the council. Again, we have COLA is about 2.75% in our collective agreement. It's the final year of our agreement. And so obviously we'll be entering into negotiations for that. That's a big chunk. We've got a number of staff who are moving up in a step. They've achieved the part-time hours that are required to move up. Those average steps are, anywhere from 3 to 4% in any given step increase. And the significant amount is about, probably about $150,000 of that is the return of the 2 hours a day that we've had taken away the previous couple of years. So it's kind of a combination of those three things, plus one half-time position in Children and Youth Services. I don't have that number off the top of my head, though. So it's a combination of those three or four things.
Thank you. So just one more question. So in relation to that, the increase in staff coming on, I don't notice, and maybe you can explain that a little bit as well, the increase in revenue to the property. So you're talking of adding more people, but I don't see the substantiation between what it is in staff you're adding correlate with the amount of increase in revenue from the...
Yeah, so again, majority of the increase is not an increase in fluctuation of added hours. It's returning those staff levels to where we're at. So program staff being back to full pool, swimming lesson programs, the return of the hours of operation. We need, at any given time, whether there's 100 people or 1,000 people in the building, there's a bare minimum number of staff that we need to have in, and increasing those 2 hours a day is pretty substantial for that. Revenues, we are seeing a return in revenue. We're looking at about $600,000 increase in revenue over this year. So it is fairly, if you look at that compared to staff wages, it's pretty close to a wash on that end, but of course there's other expenses that increase as well. So.
Anything else?
Thank you. I do, but I'll leave that to other councillors to ask.
Okay. Councillor Hansford?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a pleasure to have you in council chambers this evening, gentlemen, so thank you for coming. I want to commend the staff because I believe our document that we've read in our council package and is on the screens this evening is produced in-house, so there's not extra expense in creating this full-color document that shows the life and the living structure that the Tri-Leisure Center is. So kudos to them. Also, I wanted to simply say, I know that you probably did a fair amount of thinking and rethinking on budget. I don't know if you'd want to say or not, but is there anything that you would like council to know about how tight you were drawing your line on items to be able to present this amount in the request as opposed to a larger amount?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Hansard and the rest of the council. We definitely did a very extensive budget process this year. Coming out of 2 years of major deficits, we were a little gun-shy, for lack of a better term, to produce a more substantial budget. We think it's an increase. I know I do respect the fact that it is a significant increased ask over last year. And again, part of that was because we did use some internal restricted reserves to fund portions of the capital and infrastructure. But even the operating is a bigger piece. One thing that I didn't mention in the revenue projections is the board did approve an increase in fees and charges for next year. And there's, it's a variance depending on the area. There were some areas where we definitely needed to play some catch up. But it's the first time we've seen an increase since 2018. And so we are trying to do our part internally as well, because we know the pressures that the municipalities face and a number of asks coming forward. So we did go through a number of versions of the budget before we came before you folks today.
Thank you very much. One other question, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate knowing that there was a bit of a struggle to that, because I know it's hard to come before councils and tell them, well, we need money. But I wanted to simply say that I certainly left our last board meeting feeling that the facility is coming back to life, that you've got your staff in place to make everything work well for the public and to encourage the facility to be used. And I just wanted to commend you for that. It was a very good meeting to leave last time, because I felt like we were seeing progress when I know it has been a struggle ever since so much shutdown happened around COVID and even the year following. So it's a pleasure to work with people who know how to put their noses against the grindstone and do what needs to be done. And I want to thank our board chair for all the extra work that he has to do, because I know he lives in your pocket, Mr. Richter, in order to help things run smoothly, so that when you come to the board, it's easy for us to comprehend what has gone on. So appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? No. I have a couple questions. In terms of the janitorial services that are being provided by DLC. I remember a few years ago, there was a conversation and a direction to contract that out. Is that still working well?
Your Worship, to yourself and the rest of the council, yes, we did the contract was due just about a year and a half ago now, so we did an internal review to determine whether it was still more feasible to contract out versus bringing that back in-house. And at the time, the numbers still spoke to the value of contracting out for those services.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that it's still doing well. You also, during the presentation, you mentioned that even with the additional staff members that are being proposed in this budget, you're still 3.5 full FTE prior to pre-COVID. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Then I have a concern then, looking at the numbers, based on the fact that the salaries and benefits projected for 2023 is $4.6 million. Right? So prior to COVID, 2018, when we still had the janitorial staff within the TLC budget, was it 2018?
Yeah, it's 17 or 18. Yeah, it's been quite a while since that changed, since before my time for sure.
Okay, so in 2017, the salaries and budgets were $4.2 million. 2018 was $4.2 million. 2019 was $4.3, and obviously 20 and 21 were 22 were off years with COVID at $3.1 and $3 million respectively. So if we're at 2023, we're going to be 3.5 members less FTEs prior to COVID, and we've also reduced the amount of cleaning staff because now we've contracted that out. How is the wages and salaries still $400,000 more than it was prior to COVID and prior to us contracting out the janitorial services?
There's been a number of COLA increases during that time for sure. And when you've got 185 staff, that's a pretty significant number, even at 2.5%. But going back, I'd have to, and I certainly can pass that information through your general manager, because it was prior to 2017 for sure. And so the 2019 staffing numbers that were there included it being contracted out. So I can definitely get that information through general manager to yourself. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay, and then, yeah, please, because I was just looking at numbers, and when I saw that, it did not jive to what I've seen in the past.
Yeah, I believe it's been 6 years since they started custodial contract out, maybe 7, but I will definitely confirm that and send that information through.
Okay, so I just quick went back. 2014 is 4.4 million.
Okay.
Nothing. And on one of the slides that you had on page 35, would you mention that the revenue was increasing by page 20, page 36 on our agenda package. Or how did that work? I think when I did the numbers, the increase in the revenue was 12%, but on page 43 of the presentation, it says that the internal revenue was only 10.29%. When I did the same calculations for the expenses, it was 11% increases in expenses, but on the presentation slide here, it says 8.92% increase in expenses. And then also says the municipal contribution increase for the operating is correct, but the overall increase is actually 33% in terms of infrastructure and capital. Yeah. So those numbers I can follow, but the first two about revenue and expenses, I cannot. Can you please tell me how that number differs from what I just did simple math?
To be your worship, through to yourself and members of council, it could be an error on my part, and I apologize for that. Again, we're through various versions of the budget, and the numbers may not have been updated, so I do apologize if there's an error there. The numbers themselves are there. The percentage points may be incorrect based on what you've just said. So.
Okay. Thanks. When that follow-up email, can you provide that clarity as well?
Absolutely.
Just looking at those budget numbers that you presented and then what was on that slide on page 44, they just didn't match up.
Okay.
That's good. What else? Oh. I see just a quick question regarding the request for the capital equipment and stuff. So that will be able to allow the TLC to better handle the parking issues, the parking lot during winter, clearing the snow.
Is that the skid steer you're speaking? Yes, that's our sole piece of equipment for parking lot maintenance. Is our skid steer. So definitely a valuable piece of equipment combined with our sander. That's all we do have at our disposal.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to follow along on the equipment portion for the skid steer and the gravel spreader. I'm just wondering what the advantage of the TLC owning a piece of equipment like that rather than leasing a piece of equipment like that would be. Obviously, like I said, you're dealing right now with repair and maintenance on a unit that is costing you more than new ownership would. And I'm just wondering why the consideration of a lease where, like I said, usually maintenance, things like that, replacement, et cetera, is included.
Your Worship, through to Councilor Laurie and the rest of council. It's been well used. We've exceeded probably 5 years of what it typically should have been, so it was well maintained both internally and externally. It's only been the last couple of years that we've seen that increase. We did push it off through COVID. It was actually due for replacement a number of times since I've joined the TLC, and that was one item we just said, you know what, we can't afford it. So, but now it's to the point where we do need to look at it. We did look at leasing briefly, but we just felt it was a better value long-term because of the maintenance that our internal staff can do the majority of the time.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Preschool?
So I'd like to carry on down that road just a tiny bit more and get more clarification to the question that Councilor Laurie asked. Was there a comparison done between owning it and leasing it for the period of time that it's actually used? Because I hear that it's only used, and I'm assuming that it's used mostly for winter months and in winter conditions. The rest of the time, what is that used for? And is there a possibility that a short-term lease or a lease that would take you through the winter months that would cover it? And do you have a contractor that comes in and does any parking lot cleaning? Is this just something that you're using to upkeep the parking lot?
Your worship, through to Councillor Preschool and the rest of council, we do not externally contract any snow removal. There's been the odd time, I believe it was 2 winters ago, where we had to contract some snow removal because the snowfall was just so significant. But no, we do it. It's all of our staff. We have 2 full-time maintenance staff, and the odd time our facility operators will also pitch in to help out, depending on if it's a weekend or an evening coverage. But we handle that all internally. We didn't do a full cost comparison. Primarily, we did look at their cost of rental, I should say. We do use that piece of equipment year-round. So we have forklifts, forks that we use. We need to move equipment. We need to move skid steers, pallets, that sort of thing. So it is a piece of equipment that's used year-round. Predominantly in the winter, yes, but we do make use of it in the summer and spring as well.
I might just suggest one thing. It's very common today where a lot of the companies out there will do a short-term lease, like a 2-year lease where it continues to go, and it's the cost associated with it sometimes is less than actually owning it, and the maintenance and repair is covered under that short-term lease. So it might be something for future to look at going down the road.
Any other questions to clarity, Commission? Definitely, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for the work on the board. I think the biggest telling point is the cost recovery. As we all know that leisure centers typically cost municipalities way more than what it is costing us right now. And that's due to the good governance that the board has put together and making sure that there is a good cost recovery. Be it that 2020 and 2021 were odd years and 2022 is a year that we can recover. But having a 73% cost recovery is exceptional. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Perfect. Thank you guys for your time.
Members of Council, moving on our agenda. We have 4.2 was the presentation to the Parkland Twins gold medal championship team. They will not be here till 6 o'clock, so we'll continue on our agenda until they get here. And once they arrive, we will finish our agenda item, and then we will pop back to that 4.2 and then give them the recognition that they deserve. Members of Council, moving on to number 5 is statutory public hearings. We have nothing scheduled today, so moving on to the adoption of council minutes. 6.1 and 6.2. Councillor Hansard.
Your Worship, I move that Town Council approve the August 22nd, 2022 regular council meeting minutes and the September 6, 2022 governance and priorities meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Members of Council, you had the opportunity to read them. Any errors, omissions, or questions on them? See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Moving on to number 7, which is council boards and commission minutes. Councillor Meyer.
Yes, thank you. The town council received the council boards and committee minutes for information.
Okay. Members of council, so there's 4. Any questions, comments, or questions to the council appointees on those? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Yes, my question would be through to Councillor Hansard in regards to the Tri-Leisure Committee meeting minutes. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find whereabouts that is. It's in regards to the board conflict of interest. Correct me, just from reading those minutes, it looks like that's a change of policy, not necessarily an actual issue that arose. You know, I was wondering if you could confirm if that's
I
the
have
case.
to look at that. Just what page are you on, please?
I'm sorry.
I think we're page on 67, 68.
Okay, just one moment.
Yeah, it's 4.3,
68, top of the page.
top of the page.
I'm looking at this thinking that was this the meeting that you attended in my place? Councillor Meyer?
I don't
No.
believe so.
No.
No, it says I'm there.
Yes, so Councillor Hansard on 767 does signify that you were there.
Yes. And you're wanting me to speak specifically?
No, I wouldn't, I certainly wouldn't want you to use names. No, the way I read that, that looks like an update to policy.
I think that it was rather that a member of the board had thought they might be in conflict of interest and was excused from the meeting.
Okay. So Councillor Hansard, that's not reflected in the minutes. What's reflected in the minutes is I believe that there was an update in the conflict of interest policy.
I will find that out for you.
Just for the, so that the board members are aware, and that's B/001, board member conflict of interest. So if you can just verify that.
I'll verify it and send out an email.
Thank you. Any more questions and comments regarding the minutes? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this may be through you to administration regarding the Meridian Housing Foundation minutes. There was a resolution moved to seek legal advice regarding the affordable housing tax exemption. I'm curious if administration is anticipating us receiving lower taxes on that piece of property.
That's it. Administration?
Your Worship certainly can speak to that to a degree. So I believe in this calendar year, this taxation year, the town did move to levy taxes, so to speak, on, I believe it's a Folkestone affordable housing, the apartment building, so to speak. You know, prior to that decision, we did have some dialogue with the Meridian Foundation. We did some of our due diligence in advance of that, and believe we have that authority to do so. My understanding is that the Meridian Foundation is going to, you know, perform, I guess, what I was, you know, perhaps their due diligence and get some commentary back. And at this point, I'm not. I guess I'll stop by saying, you know, should they find something, we would certainly be willing to talk about it. But I would also, you know, indicate to council that, you know, we put some effort into that too in advance, and feel our position is fairly secure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments? See, now I just have a question to the members of the Growth and Commerce Committee regarding the highway strategy. That was one of your initiatives as for the corporate plan to look at some development or possibilities of how to develop 16A and 628. I know that there was a presentation. Can any member highlight what's going on there? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The GCC basically just received a bit of an update as to where we were at in the process. There wasn't much in the way of an actual presentation of the content of the strategy at that point in time. It was more a discussion of the upcoming public consultation and public engagement that was coming forward, and a timeline on the presentation. And I'd look to our General Manager of Strategic Services to confirm our timeline on that. I think we were Q4. That's supposed to come to Council?
That's correct.
Okay. Q4. Thank you. And I'll just have to say I'm very happy to read that there is a Mr. Mike's coming into the town of Stony Plain. As many of you know, I do love food. I look this way because I eat, and I'm looking forward to the grand opening so I can eat some more. So I'm looking forward to that. Any other questions regarding those minutes? Okay. See none, I'll call the question. All in favor to accept for information? And that's carried. We're number 8. There is no bylaws tonight, so moving on to our business items. 9.1. Administration.
Your Worship, members of council, so we just received the presentation from the Translator Leisure Centre. Within that presentation, there is an increase in the request from the municipal contribution, which is ourselves, Parkland County and City of Spruce Grove. We did identify that's for the town of Stony Plain, it's about a 32% increase, 2022 to 2023. And as Mr. Richer indicated in his presentation to council, the majority of that increase is related to the infrastructure and capital. A few questions that you did ask that Mr. Richer will get back to us, and we'll send that email out once that information becomes available from Mr. Richer, and I do expect he typically gets that information back to us in a very timely manner, so we can get those emails out. I also did ask him the question about, Councillor Meyer's question about the policy review, and that was a policy review, and there's just a few administrative updates that were required within that policy. So it was a conflict of interest policy that they did a bit of an update on.
Thank you. So members of council, any questions regarding the presentation from administration? Questions for clarity? Okay. See none. Councillor Preschool.
Yes, thank you, Worship. The Town Council accept the Translator Leisure Centre 2023 operating budget for information.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, any questions, comments regarding the motion? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure whether this question is better directed to the sitting board member from our council or whether it would be better directed to administration. The percent of increase that we're seeing obviously is significant. We know we've had discussions before in regards to reserves that exist within the Tri-Leisure Centre, and I'm just curious if we have an update as to the current status of the reserves with the Tri-Leisure Centre.
That's good. I'll pass it over to the general manager or the board representative. Any comments regarding on the status of the reserves for the TLC?
Your Worship, through to Deputy Mayor. Had a quick conversation with the general manager prior to coming into the chambers. I believe they do have a reserve, a small reserve number. He stated 300,000. I can confirm that they currently have at the TLC.
Yeah, if we could get that as part of that email, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. And then just to, as a reminder that the last couple of years have been difficult, and council chose not to fund any additional costs over the last 2 years, and then we asked the TLC to use the reserve, so it would be a little bit lower, and hence that's why this might be a little bit larger than it is. But that's a fine conversation for us to have as a council, is how much reserves is adequate for the organizations and committees that do represent our communities. Okay. Question to our administration or to the representative. In terms of accepting this as part of our budget, definitely we're going to accept it for information that was presented to us. Most likely in all corporate plans, it gets added to our budget or corporate plan as is, as we requested. During that time, if council chooses to change that amount and does not plan to fund some of the stuff, how does it affect our municipal neighbors or the 3 owners that own the facility?
Your Worship, members of council, so we do have an MOU for funding the TLC, an operational MOU with ourselves, Parkland County, and the City of Spruce Grove. In that MOU, if one of the 3 do not approve the budget request from the TLC, then the dollar value reverts back to the previous year. So in this case, we would be back to the 2022 approved budget allocation from a municipal contribution. And that would likely open some discussions up with the TLC board and the elected bodies related to that. But letter of the law states that the budget will revert back to the previously approved municipal contribution.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. See none, call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to 9.2. Go ahead, administration, for the 2021 financial trend report.
I'll just be turning this over to our Manager of Finance to walk you through the presentation.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Thank you for your patience this evening. Included in your council package this evening is the 2021 year-end financial trend report. This evening, we will highlight a few important financial indicators and the analytics behind them. The data presented show historical data for the last 10 years as past trends predict future outcomes and paints the picture of where the town may be headed. Financial condition is the ability for an institution to maintain service levels, withstand economic disruptions, and meet demands. When assessing the town's financial conditions, there are some key questions we must ask, such as, can the local government pay for what it is doing? Are there sufficient reserves or other financial vehicles available for financing emergencies? Is there enough financial flexibility for the government to adjust for change? These are key questions to ask to ensure financial sustainability into the future when making decisions. Industrial Price Index, or inflation, is presented as a point of reference as to the economy over the past 10 years. Given the diverse nature of municipal expenses and revenues, applying inflation universally would not provide an accurate representation, and this is better suited as a point of reference. For 2021, inflation was recorded at 15.8% as per the Alberta Price Index by Statistics Canada. The report before you has updated population numbers. The most recent federal census was completed in 2021. Prior to that, 2016 was the last published date. Prior year's reports obtained population numbers from the provincial estimates calculated by the Office of Statistics. With the new census data, these have been proved to be overestimated. As a result, we have smoothed out the population estimates from between the last and current census data to provide a more accurate representation of the population growth. Revenue and expenditure trends are an indicator of pace maintained regarding inflation, services added, and the corresponding revenue. Comparing these metrics as a per capita layers on the population growth to ensure the town is keeping pace with growth pressures. Prior to 2020, the gap was closing between revenue and expenditures. In 2021, this seems to have leveled out a bit and will continue to be monitored. If expenses grow at a faster rate than revenue or population, this trend would be unsustainable and indicate reserves being used to fund expenses. Comparator data is obtained through the Municipal Affairs Financial Information Request submitted annually. As benchmarked against our comparators that are listed on page 104, Stony Plain has continued to steadily remain above the median in operating expenditures per capita and has been for the past 7 years, however, following the same pattern. In regards to revenue, Stony Plain continues to trend on the low side of the revenue per capita range, however, consistently hovers above the median as related to the comparison group. The main source of revenue for the town is property taxes. Stony Plain has remained at the lower end of the comparative municipalities in terms of property taxes per capita. However, new services have been added over the past 10 years and more on the horizon for future years. The previous two charts showed revenue and expenses higher than the median per capita for 7 years. However, property taxes per capita have just exceeded the median in the last 4 years. Stony Plain remains consistent as slightly above the median, however, still on the lower range. Assessment is a key component to property tax revenue and has remained generally flat with growth offsetting assessment decline. In 2021, Council approved an updated revenue and taxation policy which will transition the current tax split between residential and non-residential to that of the average of the urban Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board members. This transition will take place through 2024 and will result in a more sustainable tax base and equitable distribution of the tax share. The percentage of non-residential assessment continues to increase, which is an indicator of industrial growth. Reserve balances are another key financial condition indicator and have continued to remain below the median. Reserve balances for the town are lower than the median and near the bottom of the range. Reserve balance is a measure of the municipality saving for future needs, inclement events, or flexibility for unforeseen challenges. through the fiscal sustainability framework and update of unrestricted surplus policy in 2021 and approved by council, guidelines for reserve standards and optimal balance were developed. This policy guides the future of reserves balances that is used in conjunction with the corporate plan, which identifies future reserve needs and ability to grow reserve levels to meet these needs and optimal balances. Council also committed a 1% tax transfer for infrastructure and equipment in 2021, which is improving the financial health of the town's reserves. Long-term debt as a percentage of total assessment spiked in 2021 due to a significant debenture approved by council. This resulted in a downgrading in the town's rating in 2021 from AA, which is good, to AA, which is excellent, to A, which is good, based on the Global Credit Rating Agency. As part of the fiscal sustainability framework and updated debt policy in 2020, council implemented an internal debt limit of 80% of the allowable debt limit, which implies prudent, affordable debt balances. Future debt limits will continue to be monitored and presented through the corporate plan process and measured against both of those debt limits. Council's approval of the fiscal sustainability framework in 2021 has solidified future guidance regarding a multitude of financial aspects for the town. These policies take time to work towards optimal balances and decisions that will change the future fiscal health of the town. As we move into 2023 to 2025 corporate planning sessions, these trends will assist in understanding financial condition of the municipality into the future and support administration's recommendations. I'll now be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the report or presentation.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. It's always good to see what the trends are going forward. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration. I'm just curious, on page 97 or 11 of 35, there is, sorry, let me go to it. The property tax arrears, seeing how the process for those to go to auction are those numbers reflective of the current years, or is that reflective of the process, and those are the number of arrears cases that go to auction?
Thank you, through you, your mayor, to Councillor Meyer and all of council. This chart is a sign of the balance of arrears as at December 31st. So just at the end of our fiscal year, what our outstanding property tax balances are at that time. So it's not specifically related to how many items are as you'll see in the agenda package, we're going to talk about tax sales. So it's not directly correlated with that.
Okay. And then just on a separate topic, I'm just curious, in terms of future trends, do we have any significant debentures coming off the books in the next few years?
Thank you, through you
to administration.
Through you, your mayor, to Councillor Meyer and all of council. We do not have any significant debentures that are coming off in the next 5 years.
Anything else, Councillor Meyer?
No, thank you.
Okay. Members of council, anything else? Any questions for clarity? Councillor Hansard?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just curious if you could clarify for us on page 11 of 35 or 96 of 155, there's a chart there that shows a bit of a spike for the year 2020 in property tax arrears. Could you perhaps explain for those who are listening live stream, as well as those of us in chambers, exactly what happens when someone goes in arrears? I know there's warning and they have an opportunity to set up payments. At what time would the town step in and actually claim the property? Could you help us understand that a little better?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hansard and all of council. So we will be going through those specific dates in the next or 2 agenda items following. There are specific dates, and there is basically conversation and contact that occurs with the property owners. The MGA actually specifies the dates of when they receive letters and when it goes on the tax notice, or when it goes, into public auction. And there's a specified time that they need to it needs to go up for auction based on the arrears. And so those are the guidelines that we follow. And then as a result of the page 11 of 35, or page 97 if you're watching from home, the 2020 spike in property tax arrears was due to a transfer to taxes for other charges on one specific property that did go to tax sale last year. And that was that tax sale was successful, and we were able to recover those funds. So that is why the amount has come down in regards to the arrears outstanding.
Okay. One further question to that, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Again, for our general knowledge, when a dollar value is attached to a property and it goes for public auction, does that reflect a real market value or monies owing on the property, or just the taxes owing the town on the property? Many people are under the assumption that they can pick up properties very inexpensively simply by coming in and paying a year or 2 taxes. In fact, I had a phone call from someone just asking the process and when was this going to come up, and I had explained that I was sure it would be coming to us soon. Okay. So I'm hoping they got a chance to read the council package online, and then they would know. I see no one has come into council chambers, but could you help us understand what are those dollar values that are attached?
Sure. So Councillor Hansard, if I can ask you to just hold that question until we move to item 9.3,
Okay.
we'll actually deal with it.
I'll
Because
put
right
it
now,
on
we're just
reserve.
asking questions for clear understanding about the actual financial trends that's presented.
All right.
The numbers and the information that you requested is on 9.3 on the next agenda item.
All right, very good.
Any other questions for clear understanding of the financial trends report? Okay. Administration, one of the first slides that was presented was the Industrial Price Index, IPI. And we see a huge jump this year, and definitely with what's happening, inflation going rampant, and then also the Bank of Canada trying to increase rates to bring that down. How does administration predict that will affect our corporate planning process here in a couple months?
Thank you to you, your mayor, and all of council. We take a look at the Municipal Price Index as part of the corporate planning process to predict what the future trends are, as well as current. So we look at the current data. The baggage of goods that municipalities purchase are different than of all other consumers. So we're not purchasing food and that sort of thing, but our biggest impacts are on fuel. Electricity has gone up quite a bit, as well as capital costs. So as anyone has been trying to buy a vehicle in the last couple of years, you can see that the inflation cost on vehicles, which we also do have in our corporate plan, is impacted. And so what we do is a mix of looking at the actual municipal price index and the CPI, consumer price index, and marrying that to our actual consumption and what actually we are seeing in the market right now. And we find a line somewhere in between that. So we absolutely do not take the methodology of putting the industrial price index or the MPI across all of our inflationary items. We absolutely do not do that. We look at them as one piece at a time. And so you will see some adjustments in the capital budget in regards to vehicles for sure. And we have seen some stuff, some changes in regards to the fuel that will be brought forward as well.
Okay. Thank you, and that's good to hear that commentary. You know, most times I tell everybody, you know, guaranteed, if we do nothing at all, there's probably about a 2% increase in terms of CPI industrial index of what we actually use. But seeing that the 2021 index was up to about 16%, and 2022 is no better, I think we're up closer to 10%. So those 2 years, you're looking at roughly a 30-some% increase. If we did nothing and we just covered the industrial price index, that's a 36% increase just to our budget. So I'm glad to hear that the staff are looking at ways to mitigate that and that we do not just use the one index. We're just looking at what we actually used and then kind of feather that into our corporate planning process. So thank you. Any other questions regarding the financial trends? Okay. See none. Councillor Loynes, I'm going to ask you to make the motion, please.
The Town Council accept the 2021 year-end financial trend report for information.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, any questions in debate on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Mr. Hill, are the U13 champions here? Okay. You know what, this is probably a good time. Let's take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll get everything all set up, and then we'll go from there. Okay, thank you. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, back to our council meeting. We just had a quick recess to allow our gold medal champions to come in and get seated. So today we're honored and privileged to have some gold medal champions, the 2022, right? Yeah, good. My mind hasn't been gone yet, so we're good. If you read the pre-sheet, they're undefeated championship team. So that is huge. So congratulations. So as we all know, that it is a difficult journey, and we applaud your perseverance, your dedication to the sport, and we'd like to recognize the individuals, the coaches, and the team. How this is going to work is little things there. Mr. Hill is going to call your name. We're going to come to the front. We're going to take a picture, and then if you can just line up in the front here, then we'll get a team picture once it's all done. So, good? Okay. And if Mr. Hill mispronounces your name, don't worry about it. He can't even get my name right, so we're good. Okay, we have Braden Moss.
We're off to a good start.
We have this, we got the first person that was not here. Xavier. Strike two. Strike two.
Those are the two that aren't here. All the other kids are here.
Okay, Lane. Yes, he's taller than me. Miles. Lucas. Zane. Let's give it up to baseball. I think that field too. Because I'll fast about it. Step. And there's also a person here that wants mom and dad, and they're 10 feet tall. So. Michael? Diesel? So D is silent. Why did I do that? Ronan? Just wanted to say on behalf of the community, we're really proud of you. It's not every day that you get to recognize team sports in our chambers. This goes to show you that as a team, we accomplish a lot of things. Each one of these individuals plays a different position because not everybody can do the catch, not everybody can center field. It requires a whole team, and that's how our communities grow. So I just want to recognize these little youth in our communities for actually doing that. Thank you.
Okay, everybody over here and your eyes open and big smile. Thank you.
All right, does any of you gentlemen and ladies, the coach, like to say anything?
Just kind of puts the perfect touch on to a pretty successful year and a special year, and having these kids part of this community and doing what they did for this community. Hopefully it inspires a lot of people to join and play baseball, community sports, stuff, because friendships that they built and the camaraderie that they have with each other was a huge part to the success that they had. So congratulations to them.
Good job. So thank you for your time. We're just going to come back and we're going to shake everybody's hands. But before you go, council meetings are very boring. The stuff that we read, you guys don't want to read, so I'm glad you guys are not in this position yet. But can you guys chant for us as you guys are leaving? Yeah, let's go. Stony Plain Council, right? Okay. Because we all need encouragement, because that's bad. Let's ask this.
And one for the parents getting involved.
Yes, thank you very much, parents. It's great to see so many people in council chambers and be able to recognize our U13 team. I know. No Stony Plain Council, because it is so dry when you read a lot of our stuff. Moving on to 9.3 of our agenda is the 2022 tax recovery. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Council. As required by the MGA, municipalities must annually prepare a tax arrears list of parcels that have tax arrears in excess of 1 year as of March 31st. Further to this, any property that remains on the list for 2 years must be offered up for auction. Prior to the auction process, and as soon as taxes are in arrears, administration works diligently to contact landowners in various forms, including statements, reminder letters, and phone calls, before the outstanding amounts are turned over to our contracted service taxes service. Included in the agenda is the 2022 tax recovery public auction reserve bids and 2022 public auction conditions of sale. The public auction conditions of sale document is included and outlines the condition of the sale consistent with the tri-region. All property owners have until the time of the auction to pay arrears or enter into an agreement, a payment agreement, to have the property removed from the auction. The date of the auction for this year has been set to November 29th, 2022 at 10 a.m. in the Town Office Council Chambers and will be advertised following today's council approval as per the guidelines in the MGA. Just to answer the question that was asked before, that was included in the lead sheet, just in regards to the value of the properties, the assessed value, the most recent assessed value is utilized for those properties. If there is a contentious property or something that we feel the market has shifted substantially, then we will reach out to an external assessment. But at this year, we have not needed to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Councillor Hansard, does that answer your question?
It does, Your Worship.
Thank you. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Loynes?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just curiosity more than anything. These properties that are currently listed for auction, were any of them in special arrangements when we gave out generous time to pay their taxes to begin with? Like, is this on top of that allotted time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Loynes and all of council. So we follow the same process for all, so they're notified. This means that there is still arrears outstanding and an agreement has not been come to conclusion. So we work with, that is our goal, is to come up with agreements. We don't want this to go through, and we're going to continue to work really hard and diligently with taxes service as well to hopefully have an agreement before the November date.
And just to follow up then, if they do make arrangements, you said the property gets pulled from the auction, but if they don't follow up on that agreement, do we still wait that year or 2 years, or does it just automatically go up to the next auction?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Loynes and all of council. It does automatically go back up for auction. If they default after it's already been on the list and they come to an agreement and the agreement is defaulted on, it automatically goes back on the list.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration, I think in past years, we used to get a map that kind of showed the properties throughout the municipality. And I have a question just in regards to the roll 581040. The reserve bid on it's $4,600. That seems like an incredibly small amount for land value within the town. Are you able to just provide a little bit of I guess a description or a little bit of insight as to what type of a property that is that would only carry a reserve bid or a value of $4,600?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Laurie and all of council, that is a parking stall associated with the other property that is listed on here. They have separate tax rolls, so they're identified as separate units.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Deputy Mayor for the motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Town Council approve the terms and conditions of sale for the 2022 public auction as presented and establish the reserve bids for properties being offered for sale at the 2022 public auction as presented.
Thank you much. Any questions, comments, and debate on the motion? See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, we move to 9.4. Go ahead, Administration.
Thank you and good evening once again. Annexation orders are put in place to allow properties a transition period on taxes between the previous municipality and the municipality that completed the annexation. In 2005, Order in Council number 547/2005 was put in place to protect properties that were annexed from Parkland County. Extensions of this order have been extended up to 2022. At this time, the Order in Council is expiring after the 2022 taxation year. This would mean that in 2023, these properties would revert to the Town of Stony Plain tax rates. Administration's recommendation is to allow this order to expire. The properties within the annexation order benefit from tax savings collectively in the amount of approximately $28,000. Most of those who benefit from the reduced tax rate are developers that have purchased the farmland rather than the original owners. Over the 17 years the order has been in effect, the town has added a multitude of services and upgrades that benefit these owners. The town strives for equity in tax distribution. Implementing this order annually on the taxation notices does require additional time by staff and effort. Should the order not be extended, the impacted landowners would be notified by a letter to advise them of the annexation expiration. The revised tax rate would be applicable on the tax notices mailed in May 2023. Should Council approve a motion to extend the extension in order, Administration will submit a letter to Municipal Affairs requesting the extension.
Thank you for the presentation. Members of Council, we heard the presentation. Any questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Preschool.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just looking for clarification. Is it normal to extend that length of time for that tax roll when you annex land?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Palechko and all of Council. Through the research that we've done, there is no specific rules regarding annexation or guidelines, and it is very diverse by municipality, by annexation. Typically, what we have seen is that it's a one longer period of time that is approved rather than 5-year increments, and not having the history of being here 5 years ago and the intent of the additional 5 years. I apologize, I don't have that background of if that was the intent was that was the last 5 years or not, but just looking at a bigger picture and looking at the 17 years and just the benefits and the services and everything that has changed in those 17 years, it seems to be the appropriate action.
Thank you for that comment. Just when I looked at it, it just seemed to me that seemed like a long period of time, and I just wondering if there was any correlation to other municipalities that would do something like that, because it's real easy for them just to sit on properties that really could be developed within our community, and there's no urgency I see from the long period of times to encourage that. So thank you.
Any other questions? See none. Councillor Hanson, please, with the motion.
Your Worship, I move that Town Council accept the notice of Order in Council number 547/2005, set to expire at the end of 2022 calendar year for information.
Thank you. Members of Council, we had the opportunity to read it. We heard the presentation from Administration. Any questions, comments, or debate on the motion? Councillor Meyer.
Yes, thank you. Through you to Administration, I'm just going to assume, but I'll put it in a question anyhow, because we know what assuming does. I'm going to assume that this won't come as a surprise to these landowners. Is there anything specifically that we've sent out in regards to this year and this change happening, or in conclusion of this evening's meeting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Meyer and all of council. Our intent was to bring this forth to council should council choose to extend. That is their choice. And so we have not given communication specifically to these landowners. If they were to follow, they would see that it was expiring this year. Our intent is to, subsequent to this meeting, if the order is not extended, we will write letters directly to those landowners before the end of this year, within probably a month, so that they're aware well ahead of time in this change.
Thank you.
Councillor Hansard?
Clarification, please. I know that farmland has a ridiculously low tax rate. I'm wondering, do we have such a rate in the town of Stony Plain, particularly if land is being farmed?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hansard and all of council. As per our tax bylaw, residential and farmland are the same tax rate.
So we have two tax rates within town of Stony Plain, which is residential and non-residential.
So just I guess maybe a comment, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure that will be quite a difference in taxes for these individuals when they own larger parcels of land. I'm just curious, has anyone come forward to say that they have a problem seeing how they're going to be able to bridge the difference in the tax dollars, or is it unapproached and then we assume that they're prepared to act on it? I'd hate to see them in arrears somewhere down the road.
Councillor Hansard, I'll ask you to turn to page 152.
Yes.
So all the areas that are in brown.
Sorry. Yes, I did see that.
Okay, so all that land there, if we do not extend it, is only $28,000.
Well, that's not bad.
Okay. So when you divide it up to all the different parcels and then the amount, there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 quarter sections more or less?
12 and a half, yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So it's, it probably would not have a huge impact on the homeowners.
I can breathe easy.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. See none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay. And that is carried. Moving on, we've finished our business items, so moving on to council discussion. Members of council, we've had an eventful couple of weeks. Anything to report back or to highlight to members of council? Councillor Hansard, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, it was a privilege to attend Alberta Municipalities Conference in Calgary this week with my colleagues, Deputy Mayor Laurie and Councillor Loynes and administrative staff. I was particularly pleased to have the opportunity to sit in on the two meetings with the ministers, and I was very impressed with Minister Luan in charge of Family and Community Sports Services. I think we have a fan in this minister because he seemed to indicate that Stony Plain had done an outstanding job meeting the needs of our community, the human infrastructure of our community, by putting up the extra money needed to answer all of these needs. So he certainly indicated that he might be coming to Stony Plain to perhaps use us as an example or prototype and talk further with council and so forth. So I just want to commend our general manager, Family and Community Support Services, for the work that FCSS does under her guidance that continues to offer the services needed to support the people of our community. So often on council, people think it's all about bridges and roads and lights and gutters and water flows and planning and development, but we are, and I'm proud that our council is very concerned about the people aspect of our community and that the needs are met so well through family and community support services. So that minister really impressed me, as you can tell. The conference was wonderful in many ways, and I thought it had been very well run, and thank you very much for allowing me to attend and represent my community.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Councillor Meyer.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. As I'm sure you're aware, I was stuck in a classroom with you all weekend, as well as Councillor Palechko. So I appreciate all the other councillors that represented us at AB Munis. I was able to get back for one Cultural Day event on Sunday here at Town Hall, the Royal Canadian Army Band. Boy, that was quite a display of musical talent. Hopefully we can get those guys back next year. Maybe we can even get them marching in our parade or something to that. Anyhow, so that was wonderful. And but otherwise, I would just like to share my concern and my thoughts and prayers go out to all those Atlantic Canadians that are suffering from Hurricane Fiona. I'm sure all of council and administration probably, and as well as the town, shares that that concern. So, thinking of them.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, I think just definitely thinking with our neighbors out east, what they have to go through. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks. Definitely, again, extend my appreciation to my colleagues that joined us down at the Alberta Municipalities Conference, Councillor Hansard, Councillor Loynes, while the other three of you held the fort down here and were engaged in your educational sessions. So we did have some great engagement down there with both Minister Panda, the Alberta Transportation Minister, and Minister Lewan, Minister for Family and Community Services, as well as actually Councillor Loynes and I had an opportunity the week prior with the Solicitor General, Minister of Justice, Minister Shandro, to speak about the Alberta Provincial Police Service and the potential of that coming in. It was also great to participate in the Tri-Region Terry Fox Run. Huge kudos to the organizers of that. It's quite the big event for them to be able to put on. So again, thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunities to attend the EMRB meeting on your behalf as Deputy Mayor, as well as the Mid-Cities Mayor's Caucus. They're great opportunities to learn a little bit more and see a little bit of a different angle than what we sometimes get around the council bench here. So again, appreciation for those and trusting me to take those on for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mayor. Councillor Loynes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had an opportunity on Saturday to be part of the Reservist Recognition Day at the Edmonton Garrison, and what an experience that is to watch them do their shooting challenges. We watched machine guns and pistols and rifles and got to hold dummy grenades. So all in all, it was a great time and a wonderful learning experience, as well as, like my fellow councillors mentioned, we went down to Calgary for AB Munis, and on behalf of you, Your Worship, because you were so busy in the classroom, we brought you back your favorite pens and a couple pairs of socks.
Right on. Thank you. And as you can tell, that I do go through a lot of pens, so definitely appreciate it. Thank you.
So yes, thank you for the opportunity to attend both of those.
That's great. Councillor Palechko.
I don't know what else to say. Everybody said pretty much everything that there is to say, so just thanks everybody for taking in AUMA. It was, I know the three of us were thinking of you while you were down there. We all like to attend AUMA. It's a great chance for all of us to go down and meet with our colleagues within the communities and set some minister meetings and promote our community. So a job well done. However, my focus Thursday, Friday, Saturday was on a course that we're taking, which will hopefully help us in governance going down the road. So yeah, thank you very much to everybody, and good job on administration. I know you always do as well when you're down there, so congrats.
All right, thanks. Just to highlight for events that are coming up, on the 28th is the Edmonton Global / event. That's an event where Edmonton Global is looking at what's the next phase of our region. We've set the Edmonton Global as the economic arm of our region. So looking to how do we attract more business opportunities within this region, to more foreign direct investment, so that we can have the jobs for our residents. Also on this Friday, on September 30th, is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And that's the time that we need to take to recognize and honor our history. Take a look at the things that have happened to our Indigenous people that were here in this land before we were, and look at ways to kind of get to know each other a little bit better, understand, and how we work together and walk forward as we move forward as a community. Not as Stony Plain or not as a small individual communities, but as one community of all of Alberta, Stony Plain, Treaty 6. So we need to kind of get to that where we recognize what has happened, and then we move forward in truth. Okay. Also on the 30th is an event that we have not had in our community for the last 2 years. It was great that we'll be having the Chicago Exchange students joining our community again on September 30th. There's been put on hold for the last 2 years, so definitely want to thank all the host families and our staff that have made it possible to make sure that they're able to come. I look forward to interacting with them and seeing their cheery faces where they come and see our high school, see our community, take a look at, I think they go to Jasper and Banff as well, just to see how our world, even though it's halfway across the globe, is very similar. Another opportunity for us to kind of grow those relationships so that we become a better society and all. Okay, with that comes to adjournment. So thank you, administration, for providing and getting the agenda packages ready. And I do mean what I said earlier to the U13. It was very dry and boring. So if we can lively up some of the agenda packages, would be.
Your Worship,
yeah, no, it's really hard to do.
If I may, Your Worship, I believe there's a bylaw song that we heard down at the conference, and we also heard by the Bare Naked Ladies, apparently, and they were constantly playing a City of Calgary song from like 1985 that I don't think any of us can get out of our heads. So we might force that upon you as well.
Okay. So if the members that did go to AB municipalities like to serenade us off? No? Serenade us? You want to sing? With that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.